Welcome back to the Pistons YouTube channel. On today's episode, we'll be reacting to an article from The Athletic where Hunter Patterson sat down with Pistons President of Basketball Operations, Trajan Langdon, and they spoke a lot about the team's vision, potential contract extensions, and a whole lot more. We're going to talk all about it, so let's get to it. Last month, Hunter Patterson, the Pistons beat reporter for The Athletic, had a sit-down interview with Trajan Langdon where they covered a whole variety of things relating to the Pistons roster, why they've made the moves to this point, what we can expect, contract extensions, all of that. So before we dive into a couple of key points I want to talk about in this video, please go check out the full article, support Hunter and all the work he does over at The Athletic. Plenty of good stuff in there for all 12 months of the year. The first place I want to start is what Trajan's vision was for the team this offseason. And a lot of fans, especially in May and June, when we saw some of the major injuries happen to some of the stars of the Eastern Conference, like Tyrese Halliburton and Jason Tatum, taking those two players out of the Eastern Conference and their teams, likely in the Pacers and Celtics, for the upcoming season. A lot of fans wanted the Pistons to go all in. You've just seen two of the Eastern Conference finalists, an NBA champion in the Boston Celtics only 2.5 years ago, lose the key player. The Pacers obviously lost Tyrese Halliburton. Those were two teams that finished above the Pistons. A lot of fans wanted Detroit to go all in and make a big move to go for it this season. And when asked about that, Trajan's response to why the Pistons didn't make a big-time move was, and as you can see on the right here, he said, "We want to see what those guys' ceilings are in relation to the young core. It's continuing to put players with them that can continue to help them grow, develop, and reach their potential. That's one thing we try to be cognizant as possible of, which is something at times that can be challenging. Of course, you want to continue to get better, but we're very aware of what the timing of that is. We want our guys to continue to develop and at least get close to their ceiling or potential. Then maybe at that point is when you realize, okay, what is the proper player fit for these guys when it's time to really go. I don't think we truly understand who our players can be at this point. I just think it's too early for us to truly understand what the best way to press the proverbial gas pedal is right now. So we're going to try to be patient with that and let our young guys continue to develop." So I don't think that should be surprising to anyone considering the moves the Pistons made. They really just replaced what they lost with veterans with some new veterans, and I guess Chaz Linear. They lost Tim Hardaway Jr., you kind of replaced him with Duncan Robinson. They lost Dennis Schroeder, you replaced him with Karis LeVert. Now, different players in terms of their size, but in terms of the skill set, that's like the replacement. Malik Beasley, that situation's ongoing. I guess some people say Duncan's replaced Beasley, but there is still a slim chance they can bring back Beasley, and we spoke a lot about that last week, so you can go check those videos out. And then I guess you have Chaz Linear there as another shooter, probably more of a long-term play, even though he's an older player. And I kind of agree with Trajan. I wouldn't have been I wasn't steadfast on them. They have to make a move or don't make any moves. But I do remember after the playoffs, after watching the Knicks beat the Celtics and seeing the Knicks take it up to the Pacers, in my opinion, I was more about, let's keep this young core together and see what they've got. I can understand fully why fans were like, when they saw those injuries, why they were like, let's make a move now. Like Cade's going into year 5. He's just made All-NBA, 7th MVP. I fully get that. But Cade's kind of the only one we know what he's going to be. Like, we know he's going to be a superstar. He established that. So you take him out of the picture. You then have, and I think this is more the players Trajan's talking about here. You have Ron Holland, Asar Thompson, Jaden Ivey, and Jalen Duren. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the contracts of Duren and Ivey in just a moment and what Trajan had to say. But those 4 players, you can probably take Ron a little bit out of this because he's so much younger. But those 4 players, we still don't know what they're going to be. I think we are we know that Duren and Asar are going to be starting players. But are they going to be starting players, more so Duren, on playoff teams? We saw them have some real big success. But for JD, his first couple of months of the season, or first 10 weeks, I want to say, were pretty scary in the sense of like, if his effort is going to wane like that, then is that someone you want to invest in long term. And JD still, he got much better on defense, and it was awesome to see. But he's still got to show that for an entire NBA season and playoffs that, he can be relied upon when healthy and in the lineup to bring it every single night. And he needs to get better as a defender and continue to expand his offensive game. So we don't know what JD is. Still very young, so much potential. Sarah Thompson had some incredible moments in the playoffs, but the foul trouble, the lack of jumper, some of the inefficiencies at finishing around the rim, and the turnovers at times. He's got a lot to clean up, and it's very exciting. I think he's probably, if you stacked up the Pistons' young pieces in terms of highest potential to least, like I would have him second behind Kate. But there's so much there, like there's so much raw talent, and it's kind of crazy how much of an impact he's had so far with his kind of limited skill set's not fair, but developing skill set. It's kind of crazy the impact he can have just defensively. So, but there's still a lot to work with there. Like if he was just a finished product today and only got better defensively and didn't get better offensively, then that limits him. Maybe he's still a starter, but I doubt you can play this version of Asar if he didn't improve offensively for more than like 25, 26 minutes. I think it'd get tough. I think teams would figure it out in a playoff series how to kind of eliminate him, especially in games down the stretch. So Asar, plenty of room to develop. Jaden Ivey showed some great strides offensively last season, particularly as a three-point shooter, but still a lot to work on in terms of getting the turnovers down, being a better on-ball, more efficient on-ball scorer. Can he really develop an identity defensively to be with the Pistons? Because Jaden can go, if the Pistons were to move Jaden, I think he can go to a team and be their lead ball handler, playmaker, and have the keys offensively. It's just like a fact that in Detroit, he will not have that while Kay Cunningham's around, which is going to be for the foreseeable future. So Jaden's really got to buy in defensively to solidify a long-term future with the Pistons. Can he do that? Because between him and Cade, one of them's going to have to be more of a defensive presence when they share the floor. But Jaden showed strides as an off-ball player. So, and then Ron, we saw his improvement at Summer League. The jumper looked a lot better. He looked more controlled on drives. So Ron is a part of this conversation, but I think considering as well Trajan drafted Ron, I think there's going to be more tie there to keep him. And he's probably not under the microscope, if you want to call that, for, do we move on? Do we keep until he's closer to that extension date in probably 18 months' time? So I can see why Trajan's done this. And they had so much success last season, especially in the playoffs. Like, this team, we can't forget, had like a top 5 defense for like 2 months. They won 8 games in a row. I still fully believe if Stu was healthy, they take it to at least 7 games against the Knicks. And there's a real chance they can win that series. I don't think that's me being, a Homer Pistons fan. So I can see why Trajan's just kind of like, let's run it back. We replaced the vets. We got a bit bigger. Maybe the shooting's a little bit less than what it was last year. But if they can bring Beasley back, then the roster's a lot better than last year. So, and he spoke later about optionality and maintaining that. And that's what they did with the deals for Duncan Robinson, the deals for Karis LeVert. Nothing's like a long-term 3 or 4 year commitment. That's why they didn't do the Malik Monk thing, because Monk came with like 3 years or 4 years, 80 million remaining. That's too much money tied up, especially with the way the cap set up. So I think I at least understood this before reading this article, but I think it's important I hope I explained it there in a way that aligns with what Trajan's kind of saying, because I understand why they didn't make any major moves. And who was the player? Like they weren't going to get Kevin Durant, really. Jaren Jackson Jr. was never available. I'm trying to think who else moved this summer. I'm missing a couple. But there wasn't ever really that player that it felt like was worth moving future picks or one of Ivy or Duren for. Not that those were ever rumored, but if you understand what I mean. So this kind of takes us to the second point of the video and the other part of the article I want to highlight, and that's on Ivy and Duren's extensions. So when asked about that, Trajan said simply, "I'll never speak to that. We're happy to have them as Pistons and we'll continue to help them to be the best version of themselves and reach their potential." I thought Duren had a tremendous year last season, especially in the second half when we made that run. And Ivy got off to a great start before getting injured. We're excited to have them both back at the start of this season. So keeping his cards close to his chest, We are, by the time you're watching this, it'll be September 1st. So I'm a little bit surprised we haven't heard anything. I think all the way back in June, mid-June, Trajan said we'll talk about that in the latter part of the summer. For my US friends, correct me if I'm wrong, but September 1st is officially means summer is in the rearview mirror. I know for me and here in Australia, we've just hit spring. It's September 1st while I'm recording this. So we are officially out of the summer and we haven't heard anything. That doesn't mean things haven't been happening, but training camp is only 4 weeks away. And I believe they can still be signed up until, I should have checked this date, but I think they can still be extended up until some point in November. So there's still like time. But I'm a little bit surprised one of them hasn't been extended. If I had to put money on it, we spoke about this with Koo when we did our Jalen Duren preview. I think JD gets extended this summer. If one of them does, I would say around somewhere 4 years, 100 million. Does JD want to do that? I'm not sure. Maybe he wants more close to that 30 million annually. Jaden and Ivey, I think for both parties, well, there is a contract the Pistons could offer Ivey like a 4 for 90, which I think works well for the Pistons favorably, but I don't think Ivey wants that. I think he wants somewhere close to that 30 million as well, but I can see why the Pistons probably aren't going to offer that because of the injury and because you kind of just want to see a little bit more. So very interesting. Like, let me know, do you think either get extended? Personally, I do think we'd see a Jalen Duren extension before whenever the cutoff date is. I think they do extend him, and I think he will want that. I think they will get to a number that works for both. Ivey, I don't see that happening. And where this gets interesting, there is no rumors for this. This is just from me talking to some Pistons fans who understand the cap and trades. But where this gets interesting is if either of these two aren't extended and they miss the cutoff date and they got to wait till next summer. In theory, the most value, the more time that goes by that these two aren't traded as we get closer to the next offseason, or aren't signed as we get closer to next season, is in theory they're losing a little bit more value every day. And if they don't sign extensions before the cutoff point of this season, then your best chance to trade one of these two and get more value back for them, if you're not planning to re-sign one of them, is at the trade deadline. So that's where it gets interesting, because that way a team that might be, let's use Jaden and Ivey for example. Say the Pistons don't come to an agreement, but say Ivey plays similar to how he played last year. The Pistons are, they're above 500, but they're not like a top 2 team in the East. Say you get to the deadline and teams are really interested in Ivey. If you're a team who wants him, the best chance is to trade for him at that deadline, so you can get him. You get him in for the second half of the season. You get him for all next season. You get him for a full off season. You can really assess before you extend him. Same for Jalen Duren. So I'm not saying either get traded if they don't sign extensions, but if they don't sign extensions, I could see a world where one of them is moved at the deadline. And I'm not saying I want that to happen, but particularly Jaden and Ivey, because of we saw last season, the Pistons, they can put together a winning team, and there's a winning formula there where if you have just a really good 4 spacing 2-man that can shoot, and in theory you'd like them to defend, but Tim Hardaway Jr. showed that you don't need this shot creating guard next to Cade to have a winning team with Cade Cunningham there. So I really want to just see Jaden Ivey and JD come out in this Pistons team. Like, I truly still see them starting this season like 10-3, 10-4. They've got the season and schedule they've got is pretty, I would say, it's definitely easier in the first part than the second half, a lot more home friendly. So I hope they come out, and I can see them coming out and this team starting really well together. Chemistry was amazing. We saw them at Tom Gauze's house in LA singing, and the chemistry just seems awesome. So it's just something to keep an eye on with the extensions, because like I said, I did think maybe by now we would see an extension for at least one of them, and probably Jalen Duren, but we haven't. So let me know your thoughts. Am I off the mark here? Do you think one gets extended? None? Both? We've spoken about this a little bit, but I do think as the team comes back for training camp in the next few weeks, maybe everything starts to heat up a bit more. The team's back in Detroit, front office is all back from holidays. they might just sign the extensions, and then, you know, the big gap of time between really means nothing. So appreciate you all watching. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. But until next time, as always, go Pistons.